So we have finally come to the last part of the novel, told from the perspective of Antoinette Cosway, her slow transformation from Antoinette to Bertha Mason, and finally into the mad woman in the attic whom we hear in this part of the novel. This is the shortest part as a part of the novel, and these are the points that we are going to discuss in the novel. We are going to discuss Bertha Mason, then we are also going to discuss the surroundings, and then the political context or the colonial context of the last part of the novel. So let's begin with the first thing, and that is the novel itself. I would like to read some parts of the novel with you again. Okay, so we begin with part 3, and we read a little bit of part 3. It is Mad Woman. It is Bertha Mason now telling about her surroundings in the attic of Thornfield Hall, and Grace Poole is the woman who looks after her. And we see that she's still clever. She has still not completely lost her mind. I mean, she does to some extent. She is at times she's lucid, like here when she steals the drink from Grace Poole and remembers to pretend that she's sleeping and all, but to a large extent she has I would say not gone mad, but to some extent driven to this kind of a mental state. She has been driven to this kind of a mental state, and let's hear her talk about her surroundings. There is one window high up. You cannot see out of it. My bed had doors, but they have been taken away now. There is not much else in the room. Her bed, a black press, the table in the middle, and 2 black chairs carved with fruits and flowers. Her bed is Grace Poole's bed. They have high backs and no arms. The dressing room is small. The room next to this one is hung with tapestry. Looking at the tapestry one day, I recognized my mother, dressed in an evening gown, but with bare feet. She looked away from me, over my head, just as she used to. I wouldn't tell Grace this. And I feel this is very poignant because her mother was the closest relationship that she ever had, their only relationship that she could trust, and yet the mother looks away and looks over her head. But even with her neglect, the mother has been closest to Antoinette. Right? And she's remembering her mother, not only the evening gown, but also the bare feet, the pretense of prettiness and beauty and riches, and at the same time what lies underneath, bare feet, poverty that they lived through. I wouldn't tell Grace this. Her name oughtn't to be Grace. Names matter. Like when he wouldn't call me Antoinette. And I saw Antoinette drifting out of the window with a sense of pretty clothes and her looking glass. The essence of Antoinette, the essence of a young woman, a young beautiful woman, her desires, her dreams, with the taking away of her identity, her name, and slowly Antoinette loses her essence, and that's what it is, going mad, losing your sense of self, losing dreams, losing the hope. So the Antoinette drifting out of the window with her scents, her pretty clothes, and her looking glass. There is no looking glass here, and I don't know what I am like now. I remember watching myself brush my hair and how my eyes looked back at me. The girl I saw was myself, yet not quite myself. Long ago, when I was a child and very lonely, I tried to kiss her, but the looking glass was between us, hard, cold, and misted over by my breath. Now they have taken everything away. What am I doing in this place, and who am I? Looking glass, as I mentioned in the notes earlier, is a very important symbol because it shows you the self, your image of yourself, and at the same time that image is another, it's not you. right? It's not you. And you remember earlier on when she sees Tia in the last place, where in the last time when Colibri is burning, blood on her, blood on my face, tears in her, and even then the two girls kind of mirror each other, the images of each other. The looking glass is very important, especially here that we are talking of madness and psychology. Now, in psychoanalysis or the psychoanalytic literary theory, the mirror stage, this mirror stage wherein the child goes through three stages, where the first stage, when the child does not recognize, the child is fused, sees himself or herself fused with the mother. There is no separation there, right? And then when the child sees or looks at himself or herself in the mirror, that is a mirror stage, and the child starts recognizing herself or himself as the other, as a separate being, as a separate independent being, not really fused with the mother. And then comes the symbolic stage, where you learn language, you learn social language, and so on, and you kind of find a place for yourself in the society. So the symbolic stage. So the growth of the child is from that the time when he feels fused with the mother, to the mirror stage, the recognition of the self as the other, and then the symbolic stage, where you understand yourself as a separate being, your position in society, your identity as a person in society. Now, what is actually happening here is we see slow regression of Bertha Mason from an independent woman with an identity of her own to kind of a slow regression to the mirror stage, and beyond that, where she wants again that fusion with the other, right? So I try to kiss her, fuse yourself with the other that you see in the mirror. She remembers her mother. So kind of slow regression from her identity, from herself as an independent thinking person, back to that. It's kind of a regression in her psyche, and that's what her madness looks like. To the extent that she goes she no longer knows her place. As I said, in the symbolic stage, when you understand yourself, when you understand the society around you and the place you have in this society, but here she is no longer sure. So what am I doing in this place? Who am I? So in that sense, that question signifies her regression from the symbolic to a kind of a to that descent into madness. Now, how does she talk about the house? When night comes and she has several drinks, again she is Grace Poole here, when night comes and she has had several drinks and sleeps, it is easy to take the keys. I now know where she keeps them. Then I open the door and walk into the world. It is, as I always knew, made of cardboard. I've seen it before, somewhere, this cardboard world, where everything is colored brown or dark red or yellow that has no light in it. As I walk along the passages, I could see what is behind the cardboard. They tell me I'm in England, but I don't believe them. We lost our way to England. When, where, I don't remember, but we lost it. Was it that evening in the cabin where he found me talking to the young man who brought me my food? I put my arms around his neck and asked him to help me. He said, I don't think what to do, sir. I smashed the glass and plates against the porthole. I hoped it would break and the sea come in. A woman came in, and then an older man who cleared up the broken things on the floor. He did not look at me while he was doing it. The third man said, drink this and you will sleep. I drank it and I said, it isn't like it seems to be. I know it never is, he said, and then I slept. When I woke, it was a different sea, colder. It was that night, I think, that we changed course and lost our way to England. This cardboard house where I walk at night is not England. I think this is a very important passage here on several levels. So it is she sees it as an incomprehensible artificial world, a cardboard house. Who lives in a cardboard house? Think about it. Who lives in a cardboard house? A doll, a puppet, a marionette? Has she become that, a puppet? And she says that she doesn't believe, she refuses to believe that they are in England, and she insists on believing that they have lost their way. So there is some kind of, I would say there's still some kind of freedom in her thinking that, there's still some kind of resistance in thinking that no, we are not in England and this is not how it was supposed to be, right? And she has, of course, she has tried to get away. She tries to gain sympathy with various people, some from various, by various measures to kind of get out of this, get out of this bondage that she is now slowly going into on the ship and all. But nobody responds. It's like somehow the walls have come down and nobody is responding to her. And look at this. The third man said, "Drink this and you will sleep." And I drank it, and I said, it isn't like it seems to me. It seems to be. To me, it reminds me of Alice in Wonderland, right? This part gives a very Alice in Wonderland kind of a feeling, where he says, "Drink this, eat this." You remember that scene in Alice in Wonderland? It seems to be like that. And again, it is an artificial world, just like Alice in Wonderland. She is roaming in the corridors, not understanding where she is, manipulated like a puppet. Yet she refuses to believe what is told to her. There is a kind of resistance when she says, "This cardboard house where I walk at night is not England." She refuses to believe that this is England. And of course, there is a contrast between England and Jamaica. The colors here are brown, dark red, yellow, instead of blues, greens of Jamaica. Of Caribbean. Now, another very important part that I want to point out in this last section of the novel is, one, there is this whole thing about the dress, the red dress, and then comes this part. I was wearing a dress of that color when Sandy came to see me for the last time. "Will you come with me?" he said. "No," I said, "I cannot." Remember, Sandy is also Alexander Cosway's son, so a kind of they are step siblings. So it is a rather incestuous relationship here. So Sandy says, "So this is goodbye." "Yes, this is goodbye. But I can't leave you like this. You are unhappy. You're wasting your time. You're wasting time," I said, "and we have so little." Sandy often came to see me when that man was away, and when I was out driving, I would meet him. I could go out driving then. The servants knew, but none of them told. Who is that man? Who is that man? Not Cosway, not Richard, not Mason. Who is that man? It is Rochester. So in a way, we know that this incestuous relationship is happening when she is married to Rochester. So the secret affair happens then. Now there is no time left, so we kissed each other, and in that stupid now there was no time left, so we kissed each other in that stupid room. Spread fans decorated the walls. We had often kissed before, but not like that. That was a life and death kiss, and you only know a long time afterwards what it is, the life and death kiss. The white ship whistled 3 times, once gaily, once calling, once to say goodbye. And that's how Alexander Cosway's son Sandy leaves her. It's a life and death kiss. This could have been her way out. This incestuous affair could have been her way out, but she chooses to stay back. Also, the fact that she has an affair when Rochester is already on the picture. So it is, as I said, Antoinette also is in a way implicated in this breakdown of herself and her marriage and whatever happens to her later. So yeah, so there is some kind of murkiness there, and if you remember, Daniel Cosway had already hinted that in his letter, right? He had already told Rochester that your wife has been having this murky affair, and that was, Daniel Cosway was again right about it. So coming back to these important aspects of part 3, we've already discussed the symbol of looking glass and Antoinette's or Bertha's slow regression from a sane person who understands, who has an identity, has dreams, has ambitions, and who understands herself and the society around her, a slow regression to mirror stage, and then even even beyond, where she sees she cannot really make out the difference between herself and herself in the mirror. And then we have discussed this cardboard house and whole England being, this her insistence on England being a cardboard, this Thornfield mansion not being really England. Important part is, I think, is Antoinette's little secret that we discussed especially in her, in her affair with Sandy. So there is some kind of a duplicity in her part as well. Before she went mad, she genuinely probably loved Sandy, and Sandy, while she was married to Rochester, but but here we come to know that Sandy is leaving and she's unhappy with her marriage. Even in her earlier days, her desire to ensnare her husband comes after the loss of the man she really loved, probably. So she really loved Sandy, but once Sandy is gone, she has to turn to Rochester. So that is Antoinette's duplicity on her part, and also her refusal to take the other alternate ways out of the marriage in a way. So Daniel Cosway, as I said, he is actually telling the truth. And again we come back to this idea of an unreliable narrator. Antoinette Cosway has had her voice, she has been telling her stories, her account of her meeting with Christophine and everything, but it is only when she goes mad and loses control of her mind that we come to know of her guilty secrets, like her affair with Sandy. So it is only when she has lost control over her mind that we see her secrets there. Also, I think we have discussed a little bit about how Rochester is do you think he's really different from Mr. Cosway? Is he, or is he just the new merchant class, is just a continuation of the same exploitative ways of old planter aristocracy? And up to you to think about it. We know that Antoinette is implicated, and to an extent Rochester is also implicated. Who is her madness real? Is her madness real? Because we see she's quite lucid and she understands things, and her mind is still free and independent when she refuses to believe that this is England. So is her madness real, or is it brought on by the mistreatment by the husband? So by setting fire to Thornfield Hall, Bertha Antoinette kind of fulfills the intertextual link, the link between Jane Eyre and White Sargasso Sea. It is not just the revenge of the mad woman, but it is like the return of the colonial other. It is like the return of the colonial other. And when she sets fire and she dies in that fire, she sees Christophine, she sees Tia flicker in her mind in the end, and they all represent the colonial others who were exploited, who were enslaved, and who were suppressed. And in that fire, it is like the empire or the colonized other, the kind of insisting on making their presence felt. So alienation, I'm sure you can make out from that. The renaming, he never calls me Antoinette now, is kind of disassociated her from her old heritage, from her link with the mother, but yet he cannot disassociate her in the mind. Her mind still remains her own, and that's why I say that she still has a mind of her own. Is her madness real, or is it just the mistreatment by the husband? Because she remembers the mother, howsoever much he can try to disassociate her from her homeland, her Caribbean islands, her mother. She still remembers it at all, and in that remembering, in her memory, and in her remembering all that, in her focus on all that, we can see that her madness is kind of a resistance against the identity, the complete control that Rochester would like to have on his wife. Okay, now that was, I think it was a detailed session on White Sargasso Sea and its post-colonial subtext or post-colonial aspects of the novel. This is kind of, I'll try to sum it up. So by telling Bertha Mason's story, Rees is able to explore the racial and colonial attitudes that were hidden beneath the prosperity of Victorian England. And not only the prosperity of Victorian England, but the famous Victorian novels that we see we have all read. Bronte, Emily Bronte, Heathcliff, where does he come from? Charlotte Bronte, Jane Austen, where are the riches, where is the wealth coming from? So Rees is able to explore the racial, colonial and also the economic prosperity of Victorian England, and she shows us the darker side of Victorian England. And as it should be, once you're aware of post-colonial aspects, or once you're aware of colonial exploitation and violence, it should not be possible to read Victorian novels like Jane Eyre in the same fashion. Now the novel Rees also reimagines the anxiety and decay of Creole planter class, the fear of miscegenation and anxiety about white Creoles slide into blackness, and we see that repeatedly in Annette Cosway, the anxiety of creolization, Rochester's repulsion Rochester's repulsion from Daniel Cosway. An important text to go back and read after Sargasso Sea would be this essay, a very famous one in the book Mad Woman in the Attic by Gilbert and Gubar, a dialogue of self and soul, Plain Jane's Progress, and this focuses on Jane Eyre, but if you read this essay after White Sargasso Sea, you would kind of get new insights into the essay. Here in the critics see Bertha as a personification of Jane's anger, her wild passion and passionate nature, but if you could extend that, and you can see Bertha as a colonial other at whose expense the ideal of English womanhood comes into being. So texts like White Sargasso Sea ask us not only to have another look at Jane Eyre, but to reconsider the entire canon of 19th century English literature. They ask us to consider what could lie behind the Victorian literature, the depictions of Victorian England in 19th century English literature. Now, I would like to leave you with some of these questions, and this has been a kind of a contentious issue. Do you think that the book presents African or black characters fairly? Are they represented fairly? We see them mysterious, we see their hostility, we see how Amelia, the maid, is used by Rochester to kind of get back at Antoinette. So do you think that the book is fair to African or black characters? We do not really know. Is Rees assuming that we all know about the history of slavery, and so she does not focus on black characters, that is she assuming that their hostility, their animosity, their attitudes are fairly understandable? So it is up to you. What do you think? Are they represented fairly? Or is the focus on white Creole character, does it come at the cost of African black characters? Again, for you to think about, how could Antoinette's story be different if she were a boy, right? We have other Creole characters like Sandy, for that matter. How could his story be different? Do you think gender and racism affect her alienation? Of course, yes. To some, it's a given question that we have discussed all this, that she is alienated, she does not belong, she is an alien in every section of society, and this is because of her race and in Caribbean, and also because of her class, and when also in terms of gender, because of her lack of control. How could her story be different if she were a boy? And following from the above questions, what can you say about post-colonialism in White Sargasso Sea vis-a-vis the representation of non-whites here, and the impact of colonialism on women? So as we go on, we might come back to these questions when we discuss African writing or Indian writing, for that matter. So I hope this helps all of you with your reading of White Sargasso Sea. Do let me know if you have any other questions.